Welcome everyone to MMA Fighting's UFC 240 post-fight show at Rogers Place in Edmonton, Alberta. This arena, home of the great Edmonton Oilers. I'm Alexander K. Lee, the bad boy of MMA Fighting. The man with the scar. I'm here with handsome Jose Youngs, the great one.
I wouldn't call myself the great one, but I'll take it.
The very, very great
Not
one.
even my mom would call me that.
Well, your mom's not, I'm sure your mom's a lovely lady, but she's not as nice as I am because you are great. We had a great card tonight. I thought, well, maybe great might be overselling it, just like it was overselling you a little. But we had a solid card tonight. Two big fights at the top of the card. Heading into it, we were talking about rife with storylines, but the way they played out was actually pretty straightforward. Let's start off talking about the main event, featherweight championship bout between Max Holloway and Frankie Edgar. Right off the bat, Jose, what was your assessment of the fight? Max Holloway winning by unanimous decision.
It went pretty much as I expected. I think I picked Max Holloway in the preview show, and we were talking a lot about. Frankie said if he had won, he would probably give Max an immediate rematch. And you were saying like, oh, wow, I don't want to see Frankie in an immediate rematch, this and that. I'm like, well, he has to beat Max Holloway first. Like, don't talk about rematches or what's next for Frankie. Because he has to do the one thing that featherweights haven't been able to do. And since Conor McGregor did it back when Max was what, like 21, 22, maybe even younger. So Frankie Edgar came up short to Max Holloway. I believe it was his fourth consecutive title fight he came up short against.
Why do you have to phrase it like that? Obviously, we all know Frankie was a smaller fighter in this. We all know he had
a longer reach than Max Holloway.
Did he actually?
Yeah, Max Holloway, Max Holloway described himself as a tall 145er with T-Rex arms. So yeah, he was tall, but Max Holloway's fought a lot of big guys. I mean, he beat Charles Oliveira at 145. Charles Oliveira is a tall dude, so I don't think the height or reach or anything played a factor. I just think Max is the best 145-pound fighter in the world right now, arguably the greatest ever. Max isn't going to call himself that. I know we've had differing opinions. Our cameraman, Casey Lyden, I think put it perfectly where it's 1A, 1B with Jose Aldo right now. Max has pretty much done everything Jose has been able to do, beating the old guard like Jose has beat Ricardo Lamas. Max has done that. Jose Aldo is beating Frankie Edgar. Max has done that. He's pretty much beating all of the old guard of the featherweight division. Yes, he has that Brian Ortega one, which is this new face, this new breath of fresh air. Huge. It was not only was huge, it was dominant in a fight that people were expecting a very competitive fight. So he has a lot of contenders now with Zabit and Yair and Alexander Volkanovski. So it's pretty much 1A, 1B right now, but Max Holloway with another absolutely beautiful performance against Frankie Edgar.
Yeah, a lot of the pundits and prognosticators said that, like you said, maybe Max didn't have a reach advantage as some might have thought by the eye test, but definitely his control of distance, I think people thought would be a major factor. He's a master at it. His footwork, especially tonight, incredible, flawless, I would say. And, most people thought, oh, he'll be able to keep Frankie on the outside and punish him when he comes inside, pretty much control the striking. And you know what? All those people were right, okay? It was no big surprise. There was definitely, I think, some late interest coming in. I don't want to say, actually, I don't know what the betting was, but some late interest on Frankie saying maybe he could pull off the upset if he lands a hard shot.
Would it be an upset? I don't think it would be considered an upset. Frankie's that good.
If Frankie's that good, I think it would definitely be considered an upset. Because when this matchup was made, there was people questioning whether Frankie should have even got it. So based on his performance tonight, Jose, do you think that he was a deserving title challenger? And also, more importantly, how much do you think he has left as a 145er?
I don't know how much he has left. I don't want to be. I don't really know, because who's he lost to? The elite of the featherweight division.
Best of the best.
Yeah, he's only lost to the best, literally. Either a champion, and then he got knocked out by Brian Ortega, who then went on to fight Max Holloway, the champion. So it's not like he's losing to people outside the top 15. He's not losing to people outside the top 5. So how much Frankie Edgar has left? He said he has a lot left. Whether it's a bantamweight, whether it's a featherweight, I don't know. He doesn't know, so I'm not going to try and answer for him. But I think Frankie Edgar was absolutely a deserving title challenger. Yeah, he was coming off the one win, which is a while ago over Cub Swanson. He lost to Brian Ortega, but he really did the UFC a favor, sticking around on UFC 222. He was supposed to fight Max, and that fight fell off, and Chris Cyborg then stepped up to fight Giannis Kunitskaya, and Frank Edgar stayed on to fight Brian Ortega in a 3-round fight on 11 days notice. So he did the UFC a solid. Who doesn't like Frankie Edgar? Frankie Edgar is one of the most beloved fighters on the UFC roster. I mean, I remember when Conor McGregor was just coming up through the rankings, and they were asking him, what's your opinion on Jose Aldo? This guy. And then he was obviously doing the Conor McGregor thing, just kind of talking trash. And it gets to Frankie, and he goes, who doesn't love Frankie? So Frankie, fan favorite, deserving contender, just came up short and is just the second, third best featherweight in the world. It's not a bad spot.
Not at all. And listen, he was really broken up after the when he doing the post-fight press conference. I wouldn't have blamed him if he didn't come out. It looks like thankfully he didn't suffer any major injuries. He was certainly pieced up during the fight. It was a very physical contest, back and forth. Guys were definitely trading punches. He had a lot of clean ones from Max Holloway. I mean, even taking one punch from Max Holloway, I think is pretty devastating. And he was in there for 25 minutes with the champ. So, a very encouraging performance. Sad, somber post-fight, but like you said, he's bounced back from these sort of things before, and he's certainly someone to be respected. I asked this to Dana White. Jose, I want to ask you, is he the greatest fighter, Max Holloway, to come out of Hawaii? Has he surpassed BJ Penn?
I think so. I really do. I think BJ Penn is obviously a legend. He's a UFC Hall of Famer. To me, he's the greatest lightweight. But I think that's by default, just by how the divisions kind of played out. He does have a lot. I believe he still has the record for most consecutive title defenses, which is like 3 or 4.
At lightweight?
Yeah, it's not even that much because how many? The lightweight title hasn't been defended that much. Like Rafael dos Anjos defended against Donald Cerrone, Khabib defended against Conor. But other than that, it's kind of been on the shelf and bouncing around a lot. So I know Benson Henderson's also way up there. He had a couple title defenses. He beat obviously Frank Edgar, the Nate Diaz's of the world. But I think by default it's BJ. But I think Max is vastly more talented than BJ ever was at his peak.
Now, just a few notes also from the main event. There was a correction on the scorecards. I don't know if everyone saw that. It was announced as 2 50-45s and a 48-47. It was actually 50-45, 49-46, and a 48-47. So a pretty close fight. Again, even for anyone who scored it 50-45, as I did, there was a couple of give or take rounds there. It was a great contest. But let's hope Max is healthy enough to fight again soon. Everyone wants Volkanovski in Australia. Don't know if that's possible. A lot of things had to fall into place health-wise. Everyone has to be on the same page. But he does want to fight again before the end of the year. He mentioned December as a possibility. He's fought in Toronto traditionally before. I don't know if that's. I don't think that's in the cards this year. But we'll definitely. It looks like we'll see Blessed fight again.
Blessed.
Yeah, I said Blessed. Yeah.
Blessed.
It looks like we'll see Max Blessed Holloway fight again in 2019. The co-main event, like we said, a lot of storylines going in with Chris Cyborg. Last fight under contract, coming off of a loss. Felicia Spencer, undefeated. Could she be the future of the featherweight division? Very good fight, entertaining fight, but pretty clear-cut winner. What did you think of Cyborg's performance tonight?
I was obviously impressed. She just did what Cyborg does. She absolutely dominated from the beginning to the end. I don't want to say I was happy, but I was very impressed to watch her. It was a fascinating fight in the fact that she had 3 rounds, she came in 146, she was going to have to make 145. She had 2 less rounds to work. Like she went 5 rounds with Holly Holm, so the question of her cardio was never there. She's fought in these 5-round fights a bunch of times, but I was curious to see her fight, get that 1 pound grace, go 3 rounds against a legitimate featherweight. Those are 3 things she had not done in the UFC. She's always fought a 145 or 140. She's only done 5 rounds, and even the 2-3 rounds she had, they were 140 catch weight, and they were all against bantamweights coming up. So this was 3 questions I had about Chris Cyborg, and she answered all of them. It was 30-27. I had a 30-26. I thought that last round could have been 10-8. I think she dominated the entire thing. But very impressive that we got to see her full arsenal after she's either just crumpled her opponents so quickly or just dominated them for 5 rounds. But Felicia Spencer was game, and she was kind of shoved. Chris Cyborg had to. It wasn't an easy win. It was a tough fight for her. So I would say it was a fascinating fight to watch Cyborg put her entire skill set on display rather than just crushing Felicia Spencer.
Yeah, and that's a credit to Felicia Spencer as well. She really didn't, she didn't back down. I'm not saying any of Cyborg's previous opponents did, but she had a game plan, which was definitely to get some grappling in there. But she stood with her too. She sliced her open early with an elbow. I think the first time Cyborg has ever been cut in an MMA fight.
8 stitches?
And it sounds like she had 8 stitches. I don't know if that was according to her coach, Jason Perillo, but yeah, it was very noticeable, huge gash. It was bleeding throughout the fight, and then afterwards, after it was cleaned up, it was even more noticeable. So it was quite the scene, and I think a mark of pride for Felicia Spencer to say she did that. I'm sure it's not what she's thinking about now. She's dwelling on her first loss, now 7-1. Jose, what do you think about Spencer now as far after that fight? As far as what she could mean for the future of the division, will she be a world champion in the UFC someday? Cyborg might not be around. We don't know if she's going to fight Nunez. Again, Spencer's young. She's only improving. Do you see her as a future UFC champion?
It's hard to say considering the state of the division right now. They don't even have enough fighters for a top 5. So she wins 1 more.
There's a title to fight over, though. For whatever reason, there's a title.
There is. Amanda Nunes fights Chris Cyborg. Say Chris Cyborg wins. Why wouldn't they do a trilogy between Amanda and Chris? I mean, it would make sense. But say Chris Cyborg just crushes her again, and Amanda wants to go down and fight at bantamweight. Maybe she wants to fight Jermaine Durandamy at bantamweight, who I think is the number one contender for a women's bantamweight title. And all of a sudden, Chris Cyborg doesn't want to wait because she says she wants to fight more than one time a year. She goes, hey, I'll fight whoever. They only have how many other featherweights do they have on their roster? 2.
Yeah,
Megan Anderson.
If that, yeah.
Megan Anderson, who says she has another fight. I don't know. She said in an Instagram comment. I don't know who it is off the top of her head, but Megan Anderson, Felicia Spencer. Chris Cyborg hasn't fought Megan Anderson, so that's always a possibility.
Sure.
And then, but Felicia Spencer submitted Megan Anderson in 1 round. So with only 3 fighters in the division, I would say it's pretty safe that a win could get her back in title contention.
Now, Jose, we're talking a lot about what's left, what are the possibilities for Cyborg in the UFC's featherweight division. We don't even know if she's coming back to the UFC. This was the last fight in her contract. During her post-fight presser, no secret, she just reiterated a lot of things that we already know about her kind of shaky relationship with the UFC and Dana White. Some of the comments he's made about her recently and in the past, it's a whole thing, man. And it'd be understandable if maybe they're not on the same page and can't get on the same page this time. Scott Coker afterwards tweeted a nice congratulations to his former Strikeforce buddy, Chris Cyborg. So if she doesn't stay in the UFC, where do you think she'll go, or where would you like to see her go?
It's hard. I mean, she's been calling out a lot of Bellator fighters lately, so maybe that could be an option. Julia Budd, she said that would be a dream fight for her. So if I had to pick, my money would be on maybe going to Bellator because like her and Scott Coker seem to get along. That division seems a little more fleshed out, or maybe she goes to one championship.
Yeah,
she did say
for sure.
She'd be interested in doing a boxing match, and we know one championship offers like Muay Thai, kickboxing, and all that. So maybe she goes to one championship. Maybe she signs with Ryzen. I don't know. Would I like to see her in the UFC? Yes, because I would like to see her fight Amanda Nunes again. If that doesn't happen, that's okay. Her versus Julia Budd, I think Julia Budd's one of the 5 best women featherweights in the world. I mean, that's a no-brainer. There's not that many of them anyway. But she's the champion of Bellator. I think that would be an absolutely awesome fight to have. I mean, I'll watch Julia Budd against anyone in the UFC. I think that's an incredible fight. So if I had to pick, it'd be the UFC strictly for that Nunes fight. But if she goes to Bellator, that's fine. Julia Budd versus Chris Cyborg is a banger.
Yeah, I think most people would like to see her in the UFC. I'm sure, frankly, I would as well. If not just for a potential rematch with Nunes, her ongoing feud with Dana White. I mean, look, it's a storyline. I hope it resolves at some point. Again, they're both type A personalities. They're always going to butt heads, and especially in this kind of professional working relationship. Chris Cyborg always been so independent. So it'd be interesting to see if she sticks around, just how that dynamic evolves. Because man, I don't know, can they snip away at each other forever? Maybe, but let's hope those crazy kids work things out.
Well, you're saying Dana hasn't worked with people who disagree with him over the years?
Sure, I'm saying Tito Ortiz, right? Hall of Fame, right?
We saw that one coming.
The rest of the main card. Some of it didn't exactly, again, live up to what, when you say pay-per-view main card, it may not have lived up to that billing, but what else did you like on the main card, Jose?
I mean, Jeff Neal was the outside of the top 2 fights, Jeff Neal was the biggest star. He got $50,000 bonus for crying out loud. This is a former, we talked to him in media day. He's still serving at a restaurant. And then I asked him, like, is that $50,000? Like, are you going to quit serving now? He's like, no, that's a personal decision. That's not a professional. I'm like, oh. That's a bummer to hear. But Jeff Neal beats Nico Price in a very entertaining fight. Nico Price wasn't happy with the stoppage, but I didn't hate it. But Nico Price was still moving around, but he was really battered up. That fight was chaos. So I think Jeff Neal came out the big winner from the main card outside of the top 2 fights.
Yeah, I love what I saw from Jeff Neal as well, because his previous 3 UFC wins, he's 4-0 now, by the way, in the UFC. He was very much in control of most of those fights. He has a strong technical base and is also a really powerful finisher. But against, like you said, a chaotic fighter like Nico Price, that's a big test for anyone. I don't care how skilled you are. I don't care how many fights you've had. If you've never been in snare with a wild man like Nico, a guy who always goes to finish, except for I think one time in his career, it really tests who you are. And
he's also never lost a decision.
He's never lost a decision. And Neal really showed the ability to adapt tonight. So I hope the UFC sees what they have with him, and I hope one day he makes enough money that they can convince him, as much as he loves serving, to maybe put that on the barn burner and focus on maybe becoming a UFC welterweight contender. What else in the card stood out to you, Jose, preliminary wise? I
mean, I know what you're going to... I think, to be fair, I talked about Hakeem Dawodu. And I know there's a very high-level flyweight fight that happened that you brought up. So
there's a few things, actually.
I'll let you talk about that one because that one was awesome. But I'll talk about Hakeem Dawodu. I can't pronounce who he fought, the name of who he fought, so I'm not going to try and embarrass myself. But he...
Yoshinori Horie.
Exactly. Hakeem Dawodu rightfully so nicknamed mean. I mean, he won by head kick knockout pretty much, and he came back angry at his performance because he got punched like 3 times. He was frustrated that his opponent was running, which I didn't necessarily agree with, but I'm not going to argue with Akeem Duatu. He looks very impressive. He also, I asked him about Max Holloway calling himself the new face of Canadian MMA. Akeem Duatu is from Calgary, Alberta. Akeem Duatu took issue with that, saying Max isn't even from Canada, he's from Hawaii. I'm the new face of this new generation of fighters. So I was very impressed by that. Dana White was very impressed by those comments. So I think Akeem Duatu, and again, $50,000 bonus, was a huge breakout star for the preliminaries. 3 wins in a row, I believe. First TKO win.
First finish.
In the first finish in the UFC. So I think, in my mind, he was one of the big stars off this card.
Yeah, if me and Akeem was going to talk about leading the next wave of Canadian stars, this was the way to do it, because he'd coming off a win against Kyle Bochniak. It was a split decision. And I don't know if the judging was that accurate.
Kyle is a good fighter.
Kyle's very solid. So for her, and before that, he had a unanimous decision win. And before that, in his UFC debut, he actually had a very quick, I think almost like sub 1 minute submission loss to Danny Henry in London. And there was a lot of hype behind Akeem even then. So for him to bounce back like this, now 3 straight wins and his first finish, he really is ready to back up the talk. And we could finally have the next GSP, Jose, which Canadians are always looking for. But no, seriously, Hakeem's his own man. I'm sure he wants to lay his own path, and he's off to a good start. Yes, you mentioned some of the fights I want to talk about just very quickly. 2 flyweight performances. Viviane Araújo dropping down to 125 and beating veteran Alexis Davis soundly. She lost 1 round, but the other 2 rounds, she...
Hyper impressive.
Yeah, the other 2 rounds, she bludgeoned Alexis Davis. And Alexis Davis is tough as they come. So good performance by Viviane Araújo, or Vivi, I guess.
Yeah.
It's easier for some of us to say. Who also had a very nice post-fight speech regarding wanting to train...
Yeah,
what did she say exactly?
In her post-fight scrum, I asked her to clarify, and she said that she basically offered to train victims of domestic violence in her native Brazil because she doesn't like to see her fellow women go through that. So she very nicely offered to train them in martial arts and stuff like that. So pretty, very impressive post. You don't see that a lot in post-fight interviews, so very impressed by her comments.
Yeah, impressed by her performance. Davis was actually, in the official rankings, the number 7 ranked women's flyweight. So Viviane Araújo in the top 10. Jillian Robertson, who fought on the Fight Pass prelims, may find herself in the top 10 as well. She's 4-1. Most wins in the flyweight division. It's a young division, but she has the most wins, most finishes. She beat Sarah Frota, really outgrappled her. Very rosy personality backstage, smiling about, after she sliced Frota open with an elbow, we asked about that, and she was all smiles, like, oh, I smelled blood and I went for the kills. Very disturbing. So nice performance by Jillian, and a good showing for Canadians most of today. Unfortunately, on the main card, Marc-Andre Barriault and Olivier Aubin-Mercier did not pick up their decision wins, but that's okay. Overall, I think they represented well. Edmonton certainly represented well. I'm very happy to be here. Any other closing thoughts about UFC 240?
You didn't talk about Figueiredo and Pantoja.
Flyweights? Are they flyweights?
Yeah.
And the UFC has flyweights?
And we're gonna talk about them because that fight ruled. That was just chaos. I mean, I tweeted.
And one fight of the night?
Figueiredo is basically the human equivalent of a wood chipper. I mean, he just beat the tar off Pantoja. But that fight was awesome. I mean, that fight, the one fight of the night, and in my personal opinion and professional opinion, that fight ruled. I mean, Figueiredo came in and he was just clubbing him, and then he won in very impressive fashion. Came back, said he felt he was on the prelims because he couldn't speak English. And then Dana White was quick to say, well, Anderson didn't really speak English, and he main evented how many pay-per-views? So said that Henry Cejudo was probably scared to come back to flyweight and fight these new flyweights, specifically him. Said he would like to fight the winner of Henry Cejudo versus Joseph Benavidez for the flyweight title. And if that doesn't happen, because Henry Cejudo did have shoulder surgery, if he's out and then he defends his bantamweight title or defends his flyweight title, say he wins, and then goes back to bantamweight, that's a long wait. He said Figueiredo is like, I want an interim title and I should fight for it. So I can't argue with him. Outside of those top 2, he's clearly the 3rd best flyweight in the world. Flyweight in the UFC, because Demetrius Johnson was close flyweight. So top 4 flyweights in the world. So I'm very impressed with both guys in a division that a year ago we were questioning whether it would exist in a year.
Yes.
And now all of a sudden, Henry Cejudo's breathed life into it. Joseph Benavidez gets a knockout win. Figueiredo puts on another unbelievable performance.
And Pantoja, credit to Pantoja, he was in there.
Absolutely, credit to Pantoja. That fight again ruled. So can't say enough good things about that fight.
Yeah, I'm Jose. I'm embarrassed now that I didn't bring it up.
Apology accepted.
However, maybe I would have been more ready to bring it up if it had been on the main card where it belonged. It was great. It was on ESPN, so I hope a lot of people tuned in and watched that fight for free on ESPN. But it would have been nice if people who paid their hard-earned money for the pay-per-view got treated to an absolute banger in Figueiredo and Pantoja. So, like I said, it was an uneven card, but I thought it ended very strongly. Max Holloway, great performance. Chris Cyborg, great performance. Two of the best to ever do it, just reasserting themselves and reminding us why we call them that. So that's, I think, unless there's any other closing thoughts you have for 240.
You called it uneven, and everyone says you don't know how fight cards are going to play out. I mean, yeah, like that, yeah. There have been bad pay-per-views. The first two fights on the pay-per-view weren't the best, but, I mean, Max Holloway versus Frank Edgar is an awesome fight. And everyone's like, well, this card, hopefully it ends well. I'm like, well, what did you expect from like two of the greatest fighters of all time? Okay. So the pacing, so uneven, sure. But there were some awesome performances on that card. And I think this is that weird stage where, remember UFC 201 happened after UFC. So UFC 200 was obviously the big UFC 200 card. Yeah. Then UFC 202 was Conor Nate 2. Yep. UFC 201 was kind of stuck in there. And that's when Tyron Woodley just melted Robbie Lawler. And then no one talks about that. It's in that weird stage where it's like that 2nd July card that kind of gets forgotten, unfortunately. So not historically, not always the most stacked card. Yes, John Jones fought Daniel Cormier at UFC 214 on that 2nd July card. We'll talk. I'm not going to forget about that. Or that might have even been early August. I don't know, but it was around that time too. So yeah, it happens. But historically, looking in the past, this fight card on this time is never that stacked. So, but I had fun tonight.
Yeah, I think we all did. I think the city of Edmonton definitely did. It was a lively crowd all night. And again, I want to say thanks to the city for taking care of us, and I'm sure for hosting the UFC. But that's us signing off for tonight. Make sure you stay tuned to MMAfighting.com for a lot of our classic content. Follow us on Instagram at
MMA Fighting, DOTCOM.
And on Twitter at
MMA Fighting.
And make sure you hit that subscribe button on the YouTube. And you're watching right now, just hit it. So thanks again, everyone.